Okay. All right, welcome to the Planning Board meeting of March 3rd, 2026 at 6:32 p.m. Andrea, would you mind reading the prelude?
This meeting will be held in a hybrid fashion with the opportunity for both in-person attendance and remote participation. Please note that while an option for remote attendance and/or participation is being provided as a courtesy to the public, the meeting will not be suspended or terminated if technological problems interrupt the virtual broadcast unless otherwise required by law. Members of the public with particular interest in any specific item on this agenda should make plans for in-person versus virtual attendance accordingly. Meeting will be held in the main meeting room of Deerfield Municipal Offices in accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 38. Anyone intending to record the meeting must identify themselves to the clerk and provide their name and address for the record.
All right, thanks, Andrea. Okay, there's other stuff. Okay, so please, guidelines for a business meeting, please speak one at a time, follow Deerfield Code of Conduct, be respectful, considerate, courteous, concise, and recognized by the chair. Take attendance. Rachel Blaine.
Rachel Blaine here.
Andrea Leibson.
Andrea Leibson here.
Kathy Wetruba.
Kathy Wetruba here.
Ann
Buchanan here.
And Denise Mason here. Emily Gaylord, absent. And Kathy Sylvester is away. All right, thanks. Okay, has everyone had a chance to review the minutes of January 5th, 2026? If so, are there any corrections, additions?
The only correction I have is that my last name is spelled Leibson, not I-E. It's E-I.
Otherwise, I would move that the minutes as presented with the correction of Andrea's spelling.
I second that.
All right, do we have to vote on that? Okay, Rachel?
Yes.
Andrea?
Andrea Leibson, yes.
Kathy Wetruba, yes.
Ann Buchanan, yes.
And Denise Mason, yes. So that's taken care of. All right, were we just voting on the correction? Now we have to vote on the minutes.
No, that's all.
No, okay. All right, with the correction, great. All right.
And in fact, in some places, yes. I know.
Okay. All right. So do you want to do we'll do the A&R? Okay, okay. So we're going to do the A&R for 27 South Main Street, map 175, lot 15. I hoping everyone had a chance to look at it. Looks pretty straightforward. It was an existing lot that is now down to two separate lots, and apparently one has a house on and one building lot.
So I presume that the building lot will have either those shed and greenhouse removed, or whoever buys it will.
It
doesn't matter.
I don't think that's not under our purview. Doesn't really make a difference. I mean, they're going to do what they're going to do. Okay. Anybody have any questions about that? I think according to Mr. Walden, everything's fine. I don't see anything. Okay. All right, has the correct frontage, it has access.
And this is the applicant is the owner of both properties. Yeah. Yeah. The property, yeah.
Yeah, Mr. Peterson Lashway. Okay. All right.
Peterson. I would move that we endorse the A&R.
Okay, do I hear a second?
27
Second.
South Main Street.
All right, take it to a vote. Ann?
Yes. Ann
Kathy?
Buchanan.
Kathy Wetruba, yes.
Andrea?
Andrea Leibson, yes.
Rachel?
Rachel Blaine, yes.
And Denise Mason, yes. All right. So it is endorsed, and we'll sign this, and they can come and pick it up whenever, tomorrow. Okay. We can sign this later. Want to continue moving on with the meeting. All right, next we're welcoming the Conway School Housing Study Update. Hey, thanks. Thanks for being here. All right.
Thank you for having us. So I guess we could start. My network is bandwidth is low. So am I coming through okay?
Yes,
You
we can
are.
do you want
Awesome.
to request to share the screen?
Yeah. Celine, would you share your screen just because that thing doesn't pop up on mine?
Yep. Yeah, I was just about to offer.
Okay.
Hold on. Mm,
All right, if it doesn't ask, I just made you a co-host anyway, Celine, so you could probably do it now.
yeah. Yeah. Okay, let's see here.
Cool.
Okay. And then can you all see that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. Um, yes, so yeah, thank you all for welcoming us as a part of your planning board meeting. Yeah, uh, oops, myself, James, and Annika, we presented this on Friday, and we won't go into each slide in depth, but we'll sort of, because you probably already know all of this information.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll go through them, and we have some maybe questions
Yeah.
towards the end, and in terms of like what we may be missing, and um, yeah, and if there's anything that sort of pops up for you, please let us know towards the end. And so yeah, we'll just go through each slide.
Yeah.
So really, we sort of frame this through, yeah, we're working with, as most of you know, we're working with the all of you in terms of trying to create some spatial analysis, some visualizations of what it would look like if Deerfield were to apply for the rural and small town housing choice community. It comes with 21 best practices, and there's sort of a sliding scale in terms of growth of units, as well as picking a few of the best practices. So we're sort of looking at all of these different between the housing choice communities best practices and the FERCog zoning and non-zoning tools. We're sort of trying to best understand them and see how we can visualize and map them out to see what would be most useful for Deerfield. And in this particular presentation, we looked into lot size minimums, reduction of frontage requirements, and allowing more housing types. Yeah, we're sort
So
of bouncing off of each other, so I'll let James
So
go
yeah,
ahead.
this is just a quote that we found really useful in kind of summing up where the housing production plan was in 2014. A lot of the same questions seem to be what's going on still about attracting young people and families, allowing longtime residents to age in place, that sort of thing. That seems to be still the conversation. So, and and this is added on that. It's just our general process. We're working with a core team, and then doing some community sessions, and then outreach with surveys. We have another community session coming up in later in March.
And so this is some demographics we looked into from the earliest was the 2023 census data. And so I will sort of talk about sort of our interpretations, but if you all sort of see a different interpretation in this data, like that is something we're totally open to hearing. So we were sort of looking at, yeah, the fact that, Deerfield has been relatively stable the past 30 years. So that could mean a lot of different things for housing, but we were sort of seeing that if it's been that stable, maybe the issue isn't really the lack of housing, the lack of housing options. And so we looked at the housing stock, and that sort of gave, reason for that, given that most of the housing has come before 1980. And so that doesn't serve, the majority of Deerfield's population that is either reaching or have already met retirement age. But because the population for folks under 34 has been much lower than that, you sort of wonder why that is. What does that mean for housing? So we sort of thought maybe there are some barriers for young adults, families, and then in general for workers. And in our core team that some of you are on, we've heard of cases of public service workers and educators not being able to live where they work, which is really important, given that the largest employment sector in Deerfield is coming from educational services, healthcare, social assistance, manufacturing's after, and then construction. So yeah, keeping in mind local workers. We looked at owner and renter households by income. Majority for both renter and owner households are, make moderate to high income. So especially for the renters, it's sort of, our question is why that is. Why are renters who make, a decent amount of income having a hard time purchasing a home? It could be because of the prices, have skyrocketed, definitely. But there may also be other barriers that we don't know of. But we also want to keep in mind of renters, especially who make moderate to low income, and we're sort of, and other folks or folks who make fixed income, but also race is also an option is also something that we're looking into in terms of who may be disproportionately vulnerable to housing instability. And so, yes, Deerfield is majority a white population, but Latinos do make up 7%. So also looking into those who are historically underserved. So those were our interpretations, but I will pass this on to James.
Sure. And you can just load up all the questions on here, Celine.
Okay. Yeah.
So there are these are guiding questions, and we first started off talking about how can we kind of balance this idea of rural character and a need for more housing in Deerfield. But after talking to community members and finding out that rural character is the history of Deerfield, it's the community that's there now, it's the farms and outdoor recreation. The question has changed to how can zoning help enhance and ensure that rural character in Deerfield. So kind of changing the perspective that we were looking at it from.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, just zip through this. So this is the zoning, which I think you all know pretty well. And then talking about the RA, the Residential Agricultural District, and just pointing out in large a pattern of large parcels in a lot of places. The exception is these three and some more smaller parcels around major intersections that are important, particularly in Old Deerfield in the north. And just having that, that there's this pattern of large parcels, but these smaller ones here, and how they would be differently affected by different possible zoning changes. And then similarly, this a pattern here in the CVRD of two major roads running basically north to south and roads branching off, often in dead ends, and how that kind of creates a quieter street where people are just going to and from their homes there. There's the exception of the Sugarloaf condos in the south, but how these are all relatively close to community resources like the library and schools and town hall. So taking a look at housing or zoning as it relates to housing, the majority of Deerfield is single family by right. There's only a small portion that allows two family housing by right. and multifamily homes are only allowed by special permit. And there is mixed use, but and then there are some places where no housing is allowed in the industrial. And so, kind of the story that we're seeing and we're telling is that as this single family housing zoning is intended to create this open space, zoning with more densely zoned housing around village centers could also maintain that open space and rural character. And so the idea that the zoning may be outdated and doesn't fully reflect that kind of history of Deerfield. So one of the things that we're proposing, or not, excuse me, one of the scenarios that we were talking about, not proposing, obviously, is allowing two-family housing by right in the RA. That's something that FERCog made a suggestion about. We got feedback from the panelists of experts who suggested maybe doing multifamily by right everywhere. That's something that we have a question for the board for the feasibility of that, but we can move to the next tool. Also, yeah, and this is the multifamily by right, and just saying that it looks different. It can look multiple different ways, and the benefits and weighing the benefits and possible problems of that density.
And then the second tool we looked into was the minimum lot size. And we tried to simulate, these are sort of rough visuals right now, but we just tried to simulate what would it look like if, given that the Central Village Residential District does allow duplexes and multifamily housing, given the minimum lot sizes, what number of additional two-family, three-family could actually fit. And so or could actually be built, and we sort of looked into this southern corner here. And when we did that, we couldn't, so this is the image. So this is, you couldn't add another multifamily aside from what was already existing. And you could build a few more two-family, but overall, the space would be dominant with single-family lots, given the current minimum lot size requirements. So the recommendation would be for duplexes to share the same lot size, and maybe even multifamily to share the same lot size as a single family. And then the other tool we looked into was reducing frontage. So this is just showing different types of frontages around Deerfield, but mainly, and the fact that, majority of, smaller parcels that will be under the frontage size will tend to be those in like a clustered village center because of how small or irregular or historically developed they were, and that they wouldn't fit it. So, but that's not to say that it doesn't exist in a residential agricultural district where this is a large parcel, but it has only a frontage of about 50 feet. So this map is this is also a very rough estimate right now, but basically what this map is showing is parcels that are above the frontage is a darker shade, while those that are below it are a lighter shade. And we paid attention to RA and the CVR district. And mainly our main takeaway was frontage can be a legal constraint to development, where if it's less than it, then you can't build more housing. So we sort of gave an example of what it would look like if you reduced frontage, and how much more dense you could, or how many more additional lots you could probably, or additional housing you could provide. And so the main takeaway from this was consider reducing frontage to maybe 75 feet, and reducing frontage in the RA district so that parcels could be further subdivided. And then we'll move on to ecology. So I will pass this on to Annika.
So yeah, we did a lot of analyses on ecology in the region. So you already probably know the rivers in Deerfield. There are also in green here the wetlands in Deerfield, and the Wetland Protection Act states that development is restricted within 200 feet of a river and 100 feet of a wetland, which you all probably or might have already known, but it bears repeating, especially because that is what this map is showing. Next. And then there are some also layers on just like different ecological aspects of Deerfield. So there's the NAGSP priority habitat, which is, I forget what that acronym is, but I know endangered species is part of it. And some, oh, James.
No, I don't. I was just I don't
Okay.
know.
Okay.
Sorry.
There's also like some mass wildlife lands. There's not many, but there is that little bit just like in the south, as well as along the Deerfield River. Um, Other one.
Oh,
Yeah.
Connecticut, sorry.
Yeah.
Um, and then the pink on this map is protected open space. So a lot of this is privately owned. Some of it is town owned, but is like in use already. So this is just kind of a map showing where development could be limited or should be limited, depending on how ecologically sensitive we're trying to be, which I hope is very. Um, and then next, please. And then, as you all know, Deerfield is on very great agricultural soil. So this is just a map showing the prime agricultural soils in Deerfield as well as the APR lands in Deerfield. Um, but we have been exploring as we've been talking about kind of this tension between increased density and rural character. And we're finding that rural character actually could be better preserved by increased density in certain parts of Deerfield. So, for example, if we were to increase density in the CVRD, you can see that is on some prime ag soils, but if you look at the other maps, there's not a ton of ecologically sensitive areas in that zone. So it could be a good candidate for increased density, especially with like traditional village patterns in mind. And then if we increase housing, increase density where it already exists, that will leave more space for the rest of Deerfield's beautiful soils to be undisturbed. And with that, I have to hop off actually. So thank you, Celine and James and everyone. And I hope you all have a great evening.
Thanks, Annika.
Thanks, Annika.
Yeah. And then just moving into transit, and you can go all the way, Celine. It's just
Yeah.
this is a map with the parcels that are within a quarter mile of a bus stop. In yellow, they're within a half a mile. And this is just connected to the tools that we talked about.
Sorry about this.
That's all right. No, you're good.
Yeah.
The main takeaway with them is that the parcels that are closest to bus stops may not need as much parking. So parking is something that we haven't really delved into as a team, but that's definitely something that we're interested in minimizing the amount of parking that new development will allow. Kind of connected to what Annika was talking about, with a focus more on storm readiness and flooding, and reducing the amount of impervious surfaces. And then the last, and then just go all the way through.
Okay.
Yep, perfect. And then, oh, no, sorry. That's it.
Yeah.
And talking about sewer and septic and how they making more dense housing is easier to do on sewer than it is on septic, and how that influences different changes in how they would affect the two different districts. One piece of clarification that I think I personally need is I've been treating sewer and water as kind of the same. I don't know if that's necessarily true for Deerfield, but we can move on from this. And then kind of next steps of what we're thinking about right now is thinking about infill and conversions as a possible strategy, form-based zoning. I don't know if there's been talk of that at all in the planning board, or if that's a dead end for us. You can let us know if it is. And then using missing middle as like kind of top of the spectrum of housing, so mid-size housing choices, and using more maps. We have some others that aren't in this presentation just because it's supposed to be relatively short. And
Yeah.
our survey that we mentioned is out.
Yeah, and so for those, so we have a lot more, as James said, we have a lot more maps that weren't included, but we're also open to creating more if it's
Yes.
helpful for the town. We'll be trying to create sort of like a suitability or feasibility analysis where we will have sort of criterias for each maps in relations to the parcels, and that'll be for, and we're sort of splitting them into 4 categories of ecology, housing diversity, housing alignment, and infrastructure. And hopefully we'll be able to piece them together to see which parcels, sort of meet all of these requirements. But we'll be talking with the core team each week on like what that looks like. And yeah, the survey is already out. We hope to do some more. If we can't do physical tabling, then we definitely want to do more outreach in terms of maybe visiting certain shops or organizations to pass out flyers to get more feedback. So far, we're roughly at 37 responses. But yeah, we'd like to hear as many community members as we can. So that's sort of where we are right now. But some questions. So these are, yeah, so that's the end of our slides. But definitely some questions that we have are, we've heard of certain case studies already that's helpful for us, especially like housing in Sunderland, definitely the senior housing that was, recently developed. But, we'd like to have more insight of if there are other case studies we should be looking into in this process. We've shared 3 zoning tools, but are there other aspects of the bylaws that you think are worth us visualizing or adjusting, or that are worth adjusting that need visualization?
Yep.
How feasible are some of the things that we're saying? And yeah, we have more questions too, but I don't want to sort of throw them all at you. But for now, I will sort of leave us there. And then if we have more time, and if you're open to it, we'd like to ask more questions. But
Yeah.
for now, that's where we are at.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah.
Couple things. So one is that, and full disclosure, I'm on this mini, I meet with these people when I can. I'm busy. So the issue of frontage is one that we have visited before. Bob Decker famously brought it to us, like, these laws, these regulations were created after most of these buildings were built. So when she says
Right.
historical, I mean, the point is that, and he kind of went around and did all this, jigging things around, showing everybody what looked normal, and then turns out to be way smaller frontage than so anyway, that is a big, 200 feet of frontage is big. It's really big. So it's something I don't think that, we've certainly talked about it before, and I think it's worth it. I have just a quick question for you about housing alignment. Can you go back to that slide? I don't know if this is a significant thing, and I'm just gonna, you're talking about renters and income, high income
Oh.
renters.
Mhm.
I just have to, I can think of 100 high income renters that I know almost personally. So I think that I wonder if the schools, if that skews data. Because you're talking about people who rent homes, but as it's part of their pay. It's part of their compensation package. So they're not homeowners, but then they do make, more money than, like they do actually probably own a home someplace else.
Mm.
So I just think that might be a skewing of data. That makes that less helpful because it's just a very unusual industry within our population.
Yeah, that's
I
a good
see.
point.
Rachel, are you
Mhm.
talking about
The private
the
schools.
3 private schools?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just thinking, I was just sitting here counting just Eaglebrook and we're a third the size of Deerfield. So, and they have a lot more people and a lot more property. So, I mean, a lot more properties like homes. So I do think that skews the data on that one.
Mm.
Anyway, and then, so back to the zoning, which is more poignant for us here. The other one, the multi-use, we certainly have talked about that before. When we looked at our bylaws and we talked about standalone, ADUs and how big the ADU could be, 1,200. Kathy got in. Kathy's at these meetings too, and Kathy was like, "I did actually really want 1,200 square feet." There was a tip over, like how much. Then at which point, and actually it was Kip Camosi years ago, it's like, why are we looking at ADUs? Let's just make, duplexes. They're duplexes. So there is a kind of a point at which I call myself personally an incrementalist, but there is a point at which you're like saying, okay, that's good. Okay, yeah, I'm good with that. Oh, yeah, I'm more comfortable with that now. That we are maybe pushing more toward the opportunity to build duplexes. And honestly, if you kind of go into it front door, you can create a whole range of opportunity for people to live in a duplex setting that isn't necessarily, I don't know, it's not your mother's duplex. I don't know, it doesn't have, it doesn't have to, I mean, those, for instance, the example that I would draw is the ones on, Mill Village. I mean, and those are unfortunately, I think, if you look at that and you go, because they're so freaking far apart. They all have 200, 200 square.
Surrounded by farm, so that makes it.
Yeah, but
it's
but
the
it is. It's 200 square feet. They
configuration.
don't. It could have been smaller. Like if you look at it, it could have been smaller and a little more dense because nobody there is moving there. They're moving there for a variety of reasons.
Facing out the street instead of maybe on a joint road.
Right, and actually the Sugarloaf, when he's talking about like that map too is very revelatory, the north-south and then all of the off streets, and it's part of what makes the Center Village actually still really very popular. It's very, the Snowberry Circle, it's closed. It's a closed loop. It's not like anybody who's on that road to be on that road. They're not passing through, and that makes that kind of, as we know from recent project, that makes that kind of cul-de-sac very, appealing for a homeowner. And you can put a little more density on that just because people feel like they're in a good neighborhood. And so anyway, I don't know. I mean, I don't think, nothing radical, but I think those two features, the duplex and the frontage, are things that we could actually think about and keep pushing on a little bit. I mean, personally, like the incrementalist that I am.
Just a clarification, that Mill Village, is that the name of is that what you said?
Yes.
MILL. Okay. And is that the one that's west of 91?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
No,
No. Okay. I'm thinking of a different one. All right. I'll look it up.
there's a couple condo like complexes on Mill Village, to be clear. It's the other
Okay.
side of North Main, if that helps, James.
Okay. Yeah, no, I got you. Thank you.
Yeah, I sort of wondered, like, going back to that, like, are there, I understand for Old Deerfield, but I wonder if any of you have an idea of why there is so much clustering, at least for for these two areas of Deerfield. Like why, I'm just thinking, like trying to understand where these patterns are coming from outside of where these patterns are coming from of these clusterings that are outside of the central residential village district.
There was a huge condo boom in like the 80s or something, and they were developed. Oh, sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Like,
Mhm.
no, they're all over the place. Like there's condo developments on Stillwater, on Mill Village,
And Lee
on
Road.
Lee Road.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and there was this big boom of them in the 80s, maybe later 80s, by a handful of developers, if even. And quite frankly, they were purchased up pretty quick with long-term residents living in them. Up by Lee Road. This is a dump. I used to live up there. Yeah, I didn't even know the dump was right next door. I had no idea. I lived there for a year. It's like, why are there so many hawks outside all the time? And so yes, but a lot of them were developed at the same in a relative close amount of time, like 6-7 years, and they were filled. And you know what? UMass is not far, and Northampton's not far, and it was the suburbs. And there are a lot of
I see.
yeah, that's true.
And what's interesting, back in the 80s, the interest rate,
Yeah.
well, we lived in another place, but the interest rate was about 16%
Right.
for a
Yes.
first house.
Sure.
Mm.
Well, another thing too is those are the properties of the children of the parents that had them, right? And there might have been 1 or 2 kids, right? They can afford to go back into living in those residences. But so one of my questions was, why is purchasing a home difficult for a moderate income couple? And so the question I have is, are the homes too big? Is there no inventory? Are they too expensive? Are they too far on the outskirts? Like, what is it that is not appealing? Is it strictly financial, or is it the inventory and where the inventory is?
Yeah.
I mean, I could not go and live in the home I grew up in Northampton. I couldn't afford to buy it. There's no way. Right. So it's like completely off the table. Not possible. So the question I have is, as a kid who's grown up here, coming back to a house that was affordable for the parents, is it that far out of whack? Like, is it that
Yes.
far financially off the rail?
And the expenses for other things, if you're a young
True.
family, childcare is unbelievably expensive.
Well, and also our inventory, we have some big houses and people are having 2 kids. Nobody's buying a 5-bedroom house anymore, probably.
Mhm.
Like my children's age, 30s, they're not having that many kids.
Yeah, no, you're right. And also, it's just super expensive to maintain a big house. So,
Yeah.
all the thing. It's fast, but still.
It's gonna.
Maybe the wetlands.
I was going to say, that brings up a question, on one of your first slides that showed that, I think it showed that population hasn't changed in 30 years.
Yeah.
But how has household size changed? Or has it changed?
That's a great question.
It's an aging population. The last time I looked, 45% of individuals in Deerfield were over the age of 55, at least. I mean, Deerfield is really an aging population.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
if household size is smaller and population has stayed stable, that means they're requiring more housing.
Mm.
Right?
Well, we have a lot of people that are overhoused, and especially I think in the central district. And that was sort of the whole idea, not
Sure.
the whole idea, but a big idea about putting senior housing, getting people out who are overhoused so that young families could move in, or to turn them into, have an ADU in
But,
the
right,
home.
so the fact that the population is older and a family of 5, which used to live together, is now living in 2 houses, I mean, that can cause, an overall problem, right, I think.
I don't know.
Well, and also too, like our elementary school at one point had 3 of each grade, K through 6, and now they have 2 of each grade. Right? Like, that's a lot. And it's
Yeah.
a school of choice too, on top of that. Like the elementary school and our middle high school, the enrollment is absolutely down.
Population of Massachusetts is down. All of it.
But to Anne's point, our population is down.
That's right. True.
Right.
True.
Yes.
No.
Microphone.
Population is not down, just
Yes.
student census is down in our schools.
Well, and how many adults are living at home? Like, I was watching Jeopardy and this guy said he was a stay-at-home son, and it hit the internet so hard, right? And so, but then it really went into like media saying, "What is this? A stay-at-home son?" It was sort of a cheeky joke, but there's a reality to that, right? Like, so
Yeah.
to your point, like we still have the same population of people, but how many are still living
Right, exactly.
at home?
Yeah.
Yes,
Mhm.
and why?
Oh.
But to Andrea's point, that is partially that's a cost of everything.
Yeah.
Sure.
Right. So young families are not finding their way to homeownership, not just because they can't find the inventory, not just because once they do, they can't afford it, but also what they need to be spending their money on, maybe much more, intentional, right where they, in the moment that they're in.
Mm.
What drove us when we had this subcommittee a jillion years ago, I want to say it was 2014. That was one of the dates on your timeline. So maybe that was it. That seems like a long time ago. That was one of the data points was that that Alyssa LaRose, who was the FERCog person who was helping us out with that, who said that if you had a teacher and, relatively a 5-year member of our own police department, that they would not be in the middle, like they would not be able to find a house to afford in Deerfield at that time.
Mm.
That was kind of striking, and that was what. And our job at that point was there was more opportunity for unfriendly development, i.e., development that would come in, and they didn't need to if you didn't show that you had the housing inventory. So there were a variety of them that happened across the state. The state made it available for developers to skip frontage requirements, height requirements, et cetera, because a town would not have met that threshold for building. And absolutely, we just, for some reason, we were really worried about back then. I think Sunderland had kind of some interest in something like that, and so got everybody a little jangled about it. We're down on the Cape, and in Falmouth, there's a project, really attractive project, and it is so slam on the road, I can't tell you. And they went around a bunch of, and they negotiated with the town. They ended up going down a unit in order to, keep people happy and whatever. But it is a project that was not, that was kind of built outside the regs because the town was behind in their housing inventory.
Okay, so my question, so where do we go from here? I mean, there are a lot of questions here. You guys have a lot of questions. I mean, and I know you're meeting every week with your committees and you'll have another presentation. So how will what you have learned or learned from the surveys, how will that affect the information that you currently have? You'll have to make.
Two things. One, I don't know about parliamentary procedure, but I do see Emily, you have your hand up. So I don't know how that works in terms of like comments.
I'm on planning board too. I just had
okay, cool.
Sorry,
I just want to
Emily.
make sure.
One thing to my planning
Only
board.
time we get to mute her.
You do need to speak into the mic. It is hard to hear you. Other than Rachel, we can hear you crystal clear. I did want to say, I think that the question about this, we're just going around and round around supply and demand, right? If there's less supply, it's going to increase the demand. Whether or not something is listed at a price point someone could afford, there's so many people who want that house that it's driving the prices up and up and up. And I don't think any homeowner is going to say, oh, I could have sold my house for $400,000 to somebody when someone else offered me $600,000. And so that is, I think, the trend that housing is going through in the Northeast in general and in, probably nationally. So I think that's one question is how much of this is unique to Deerfield and how much of this is just kind of the trends that we're seeing. But I do think that one thing if we want more housing, we do have to get comfortable with more types of housing. And I think that that's going to be the tension point potentially, is what does that actually look like? Like, and I think Rachel, you were talking about duplexes, like that can fit into the character of a town very easily, but you have to be comfortable with allowing for some level of infill, the frontage question, and allowing some diversity of housing in town.
Yeah.
So basically a +1 to what you were saying, but I do think that question around how much is a Deerfield trend versus just what we're seeing, and how are you fight a tide that's national? I don't know.
Yeah. I don't have the numbers directly in front of me. I know it's a relatively tighter market in Deerfield than in some other places, just in terms of like available units. I think it's like for rent, it's like 1 point something percent, which is like lower than, I think it's like should be between 2 and 7. Like I don't have the numbers in front of me, so don't quote me exactly. But I do remember in the research that is a thing. But you're right, it is a regional, statewide, and national trend. So. But I think the question was, where are we kind of going? Sorry if I'm messing that up, but like I think right now the big thing we're thinking about for community engagement is thinking about housing types for sure. Talking about that, I know ADUs, we didn't touch on that in this, but I know that's a big thing. But really, I think a concern we have is like the duplexes, part of the trying to visualize what could happen. The missing part, I think, is like, will it happen? It is there, because I know the ADU has been allowed in some form, but there hasn't been a lot of people who are actually doing it, is my understanding. And a concern, I think, is if allowing duplexes, we can say like, here's what could happen. But if so, what we want to do when we talk to the communities is see, if they're individuals who are interested in converting, because I think it's relying on people who have large houses to convert their own houses rather than developers coming in to do that. So that's something that we're trying to figure out how to know.
How to
Like,
promote it, right? Like
yeah,
how to,
well,
yeah, how to
and just like know
post.
what the appetite is, right?
Mhm, mhm.
We
And
also,
oh,
just a quick, back to one of your other slides, and I think who was still on the board? We were on the board for our form-based, we crawled down the form-based
oh
zoning
yeah.
rabbit hole with Annalee. No? You remember that?
Yeah.
Anyway, too small. We're not like, it's not we really like, I would just take it off the table because as we
Okay.
explored it, it just wasn't, it didn't make sense in such a small, already fairly developed down, the kinds of
Hmm.
that we already have just didn't make as much sense. We did talk about it for a long time.
That's helpful.
Hmm. Hmm.
Because quite frankly, it's very complicated. So
It was super interesting.
yeah.
I think the other thing too is not just like the mixed use and duplexes, is population. And where is the population going to increase, and how is that increased population going to affect mobility within town? And again, we go back to the parking, which was the pick your community, it's an issue, right? And so I think, there are a lot of people that are like, bring the diversity and bring the people and bring the population and bring in new ideas and business, and others not as much, right? And so I think that's a divide,
Yeah.
Well, that's what happened. That's why we have bylaws. I mean, we can change our bylaws. I mean, I think there's a lack of affordable housing.
Yeah.
And the problem, because we don't have enough affordable housing, we don't have access to other grant funding. I mean, I know that that's what, senior housing they've been looking into that. But I mean, there are plots of land that we could do some affordable housing.
Yeah.
What proportion of housing in Deerfield is rented or rental, and what is purchased? Does anybody know?
It's a good question.
Well, is that 1.3% number you were saying?
That's like housing that's available. We I did know it at one point in this. I do think it is relatively small. Um, a let me try and find that, and then but
Well, I've got Franklin County from our 2014 housing production plan. It says 31% of housing in the county is renter occupied, while 69% is owner occupied.
That's
But
all
that's the
Franklin
county,
County.
so it's not
It's mostly
I-
equal with Greenfield.
I think it's much lower. I think it's lower in Deerfield, but not as low as it's not the lowest in the town. I seem to remember it was definitely lower than Greenfield, but not as low as like Conway. But
okay.
it's a while since
Sorry.
I've looked at that.
This one says, sorry, I found a little bit lower in. Roughly 75% are owner occupied and 25% are renter occupied. And that was 2014.
Yeah.
How many housing units are there?
This time, 2,181 housing units. And so like then I know at least in the last 5 years, we've had at least, I think it was like 75, probably you could approximate 100 units because of the Sugarloaf condos, right? That was like seven. Yeah. So that was 70 in the last like 5 years. And then, yeah. And I think it was 10 last year. So even if you averaged, and 10 unconfirmed, I need to ask Bob for sure.
I thought-
Not houses, but somewhere
Okay.
there were I think 2 ADUs in there.
Okay.
Or
I think it was 5 in the past couple of years.
yeah, I think
2
5
or
is
10.
probably safer.
We'll get 12 new units where the Cumbies was. Small.
Okay. So.
So do you have the quick, the questionnaire? Is it on, did you guys connect with Tim and put it on Engage or not?
Yes.
I didn't, is it on?
And it's on Facebook on Deerfield Now, and
Oh,
I
great.
added the link to it today. So
Oh, excellent.
hopefully it'll show
Excellent. Okay, good.
with the link.
So it's available on Facebook. Where else?
It's on the town website. We put it as a news blast. It's on Deerfield Now and on the town's newly created Facebook page. So if you want to test that out, it's there.
Yeah, and so
Only
some
Greg, but
and we hope to, as we get more responses, like a lot of the questions within the survey talk about like various like preferred housing types in different parts of Deerfield. The demographic sections tell us like, how many people are living in their, household. So we're going to try to see from, the patterns that we're getting within the survey data that will hopefully help us. With HCC, there's 21 best practices. With FERCOG, there's, I think, more than that in terms of tools. So trying to see out of all that list of tools, which ones would be most applicable to Deerfield is sort of what we're trying to figure out. But if there were already bylaws that we haven't talked about that you think would need updating or adjusting or something, then that will get us to that answer sooner than later. But yeah, really we'll use the survey data probably for the next community engagement to talk about like what were the main concerns and takeaways. But we'll use it also in deciding the tools that are relevant.
well, and I just want to add one quick thing that, one thing we were talking about is increasing the housing density, so adding more duplexes across town. But then you also have to trigger all the dimensional requirements for, the percent developed area, and that then also translates to how much parking requirement you're going to have, and your driveway, your pervious pavement, and all those sorts of things. Like, it adds more layers. So I think that's why we had talked about if we were increasing the number of units, you might allow, even if it's just by special permit. Maybe we don't allow it by right all over, but maybe we start at least allowing it by special permit instead of just a flat out no. And then, we look at reducing parking because the new ADU bylaw, well, the MGL actually says that you can't require additional parking spaces if the lot is within a half mile of a transit station. So that was why I was kind of like, layering on, should we look at bigger ADUs? Should we just look at duplexes? But there's also going to be like a weird balance, like fully honest, of like what is an ADU versus a duplex, and like cross that line, because all duplexes, it doesn't matter what the dwelling unit type is or what the use is, the principal use structure is. It's ADUs are allowed by right regardless, as long as they can meet all the other requirements. So
Right.
gets a little weird.
And we'll be looking at, I think, in addition to the missing middle, we'll be looking at like for the different housing types, there's like this like living little housing living. So that goes into detail about different types of housing for, more, but for more smaller housing sizes, and parking is part of that conversation. I saw like for some of the documents we'll be looking over, there's a lot of like parking blueprints and dimensions included in that. So we'll see if we can sort of get any takeaways from that to be inspired in our deeper look into parking suggestions, for sure.
I think it's kind of important to know whether there's demand for rental as opposed to,
Yeah. Okay. So I don't think we'll be able to solve all the problems of the world this evening, but, we'd certainly try.
Narrowing down a little bit, like dropping form
Yeah.
for example, pushing a little bit at ADUs, thinking about the differential between ADUs and looking at where these maps can be helpful in terms of where duplexes would be by special permit, encouraged by special permit.
Do you, Alex, do you happen to have the information? I know a couple years ago, Senior Housing, Lely, they compiled a whole list of all the available land in Deerfield. Do you have that?
Owned by the town?
Yes, owned by the town.
Yeah, we do. And they're actually, Celine was working on a similar thing in their parcel map that they have. And then I think we also should add in maybe some of the water district and fire district lands, because they own some weird parcels too that would be interesting to evaluate. But I think one thing that would be helpful, just like specifically in your analyses, is I don't know if there's even interest of looking at a larger ADU by special permit. So it's allowed by 900 square feet. So Montague just did it, and that's why I mention it, because that was one of the mailers that sent in that they passed an ADU by right, 900 square feet, straight state adoption. But then they also allowed an ADU up to, I think it was 1,200 square feet by special permit. So maybe if there's a map that could be made in like a similar area of, this is what 900, this is what 1,200 would be allowed or would not be allowed, or, whatever. Specifically, I guess, sorry, that's the one I'm interested to see. Or, I don't know if there's bigger house sizes or whatever you'd think, but that was just a easy model to replicate, I think.
And again, back to what Ann said, find out who the renters are. Like, are we talking about something that's actually like, there's a market for it?
Yeah. I mean, I would think so. With J2K kind of, I feel like made that case when they came for their project. So.
Well, and again, as the vacancy rate is under 2%, so.
And the prices are.
Yeah. So anyway, next steps for the students, obviously be doing some of that stuff, but the housing survey, if you guys could promote it, that would be awesome. I also have hard copies if anyone prefers to fill it out that way.
Did you
Or
put
wants
any at the
assistance.
library, hard copy?
Yeah,
Senior center?
Pam was bringing over to the library because she had a meeting and was also
Nice.
passing out the surveys. And then I think, yeah, we've talked quite a bit with the students about the senior center, and they were talking about maybe going in person.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna figure out when we have the brown bag thing, because we host a food pickup for seniors in need to here in town hall. I can't remember.
It's on Wednesday, I think, sticking on bags.
Yeah. So
Next Wednesday.
No, make them fill them out.
yes, Engage put it in their newsletter too. So yeah.
Yes.
And then just sorry, I'm gonna add one more thing. We're probably gonna do the last community outreach meeting during the ZBA meeting on Thursday, the 19th, tentatively. I'll send out a formal invite, but we're gonna do a more community outreach thing as part of this. And all of the survey data, all these maps, they'll be in like a final report that the students will share with us at the end of the project. So just, kind of the path out.
To that point, if there's any maps that you think would be super useful for us, or any bylaws that we didn't mention that like taking a look at would be helpful. Let Alex know, and she can pass it on to us if there's stuff that we didn't cover right now. But
I think a map of all the available parcels of land. I mean, we know what the parcels are. I don't know how difficult it is to make a map of all of them. Might be.
I mean, it's something we can look into for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, they are, okay. Yeah, okay. I wasn't sure that they just identified the, okay. All right, all set? Okay, well, thank you. We look forward to hearing the next presentation, and hopefully you get a lot more surveys. I mean, I don't recall, but years ago, I remember that in order to have a valid survey, you had to have at least 180 responses. Is that correct, or is that wrong?
Well, definitely more than 37. So yeah. We're
The
gonna
more we
try
have,
our
the better
best.
it is. But we'll do what we can.
Wasn't sure. Anyway, thank
Yeah.
you again for coming. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having
No,
us
thank you all. Thank you for listening, and thank you for your feedback.
and your time. Thank you.
All right, take care. Bye.
Okay. All right, so let's see, where are we? Hi, Emily. So Emily is here. Make note of that in the minutes.
Yep.
Okay. Any other, is there other business? Okay, reports. CPTC conference, May 21st. I'm sorry, March.
I sent it out. I just wanted to make sure everyone was aware that the conference is coming up.
Yeah. Is anyone going?
Not that I'm aware of. So.
I know.
thought
I
I'd
know.
check.
Thanks. I know. I've
Do you want to spend your Saturday?
I've gotten emails on
It's
that
the
like
long run.
once a week,
Yeah.
but yeah. Okay. All right. We've got town hearing notices, decisions. How about any reports on any committees? Anything? Andrea?
Yeah, open space. So open space has voted to create a new subcommittee called the Playground Subcommittee. It's going to be an official committee of the Open Space Committee. So it'll be subject to open meeting law, et cetera.
Okay.
I'm on it. And Alex will be there. So she will be there to advise. Gabby will be there to advise, since they are both town employees. They cannot be members of the committee. And we're working on it.
When are you meeting, Andrea?
Don't have a meeting yet.
All right, I'm interested.
I got your name. Yeah. I believe that the selection process will be up to the chair of the Open Space Committee, but you have no say. Yeah, but I've let her know that you're interested, Emily. And we have several other people who are interested.
Good. Great. Okay, let's see. I know Engage Deerfield is having on March 15th at the 1821 Meeting House. It's town meeting boot camp. Mock boot camp, fictitious situations. But it should be really interesting. So I think the idea is to try and get more people to town meeting and to really understand how town meeting works. So that is happening March 15th. I can't think of anything else. Anything else on our master plan? Anything else on I mean, are we going to try and do, gosh, it's coming up soon, anything in terms of bylaws?
No, for town meeting, we're way too late to meet any of the like public noticing and stuff. But I figured since we're doing this ADU study, we might as well like focus and maybe we could hit fall town meeting for ADU bylaws. There's already a lot of other things going on the warrant already. So it may be a long town meeting anyway. So might be much, yeah.
Okay. There's, okay. All right, so we'll shoot for the fall for doing that and possibly a few other corrections on bylaws.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. I think we just need to circle back and figure out which one's exactly our priority.
There are
And
lots. And
Yeah.
and nothing in terms of master planning with FERCog.
we could apply for community one-stop funds that are coming out. I'll need to look. They just released them, so they're available. We could put in an expression of interest. And then I think the application's open in May to June-ish timeline. So we can throw one in and just see what they think. I mean, do you think the entire master plan or do you think pieces of the master plan? That's the hard part is,
Well, what are there, five different sections to the master plan, I think?
well, it's very open
Yeah.
to however the
yeah, I
town
mean,
wants to do it. Do we want to just reference open
the
space and rec?
outdated ones that we have. Well, I think there's some work that's already been done. For instance, all the work that Open
Mhm.
Space has done. I think I'd have to look back. I never looked at the whole plan, but I'm sure we could start with sections.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we could absolutely do that. We could at least pick
Make
a
it a
handful.
2-year process.
Yeah. Yeah, because the other thing is, so I did actually, I didn't even get to say it earlier, but I applied, the town applied for the Housing Community of Choice Rural and Small Town designation. Yeah, so I don't know. We barely sort of met 9 of the criteria, like the bare minimum with our housing production. So I don't know how that's gonna go. There's one that's kind of like I'm not really even sure. And the rural and small town designation, the criteria is all very like vague. It feels very subjective. So I don't know what the state's gonna say if what I submitted is gonna meet their intent enough or not. But hopefully in the next few months we'll also know, what that looks like. And maybe we need to do a housing production plan. That's one of the best practices. That's pretty easy. That's also eligible for one stop. FERCog just told us they don't have enough funding for it this year. So I was trying to get pieces in under the local technical assistance that they provide, but they kind of came back and said they don't really have anything. They might be able to do an economic development piece though. So we could maybe start there and count that section as done, count open space as done, and piecemeal things. So, yeah.
Okay, all right. Our next meeting is April 6th.
April 6th. Well, then I think it's time for us to adjourn. I move that we adjourn. We're-
Do I hear a second?
I second that. Kathy
Take a
Wetruba.
vote. Emily?
Aye.
Rachel, aye.
Andrea, aye.
Kathy Wetruba, aye.
Amy Buchanan, I.
And Denise Mason, aye. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Sorry I was late.